said, because we're recording right now, and I'm just going to share here for. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I am recording. Okay, so I'm recording. So the test starts at 4 p.m. today. It'll be made available, and again, it's available in topic 5. So look for the test number 1. You access that. It'll be available till tomorrow till 3 p.m. So it gives people time to work that into their schedule. I will not be online the entire time, no doubt. And the thing is that what you need to do is, if you need to contact me, please do not contact me through Blackboard. Contact me through my regular RDP email, and then that way I have my smartphone beside me and I'll be able to respond a lot quicker. Okay, so that's where that's going. And also remember that, before you go on board, make sure that your lockdown browser is working. Make sure that your webcam is working. And the thing is, if you don't get access right away, the only remedy that I've got for you is that you clear your cache and you reboot, and chances are you'll get through that. And then there's another area where you have to show your ID. Just hit continue and you can get through that as well. It won't stop you from getting into the test. All right, so that's my advice around that. And again, please read all the instructions, and you're going to see those questions come up one at a time. And you're going to have a self-submit after 80 minutes, apart from anybody that's on accommodation. Okay, so that's where that is, and we're going to start with topic 6, and essentially, how do I improve my organization's financial? And you're saying, well, this isn't an accounting course. Why are we doing that? What I can tell you is that to be able to leverage your knowledge in management principles, you need to know the business. And one of the key areas of knowing the business is understanding the numbers. And that's just so paramount. And so that, if you leave this course with anything, I've sent you a note about the BDC little article on financials. Go through that. And if you understand that, you'll have almost enough knowledge to be able to say, yeah, I know what to do in terms of manage that business through the numbers, and I know why I'm getting those numbers in those financials. I know who's looking at them. I know how I'm going to deal with them. So that's really what you need to know, and that's what really the essence of topic 6 is all about, in terms of letting you understand how to run that business. And that's why there's going to be like 15 ratios you're going to have to calculate inside the assignment I give you on the cupcakes. So that's all to put you in view of how it is that you need to run that business and know that business inside out, and so that you can really apply the proper management tools as you're managing that business. So we're going to look at the areas of financial management. We're going to look a little bit about how do you finance your business. There's very many alternatives, and I think you should understand that from a general understanding point of view, because how you finance your business impacts your cash flow. It impacts your profitability. So that's key. Excuse me, and then how you manage risk, because you will manage the right key performance indicators, or the metrics of your business, based on the risk and the environment that you're living in, and you need to understand that. And again, there's key ratios that you're going to need to know to be able to run your business. And the thing is, so we're going to cover 15 financial ratios. But how do you pick those KPIs, those key performance indicators? Well, it depends. It depends on the uniqueness of your business. It depends on what's going on in the industry that your business is in, and it depends on the conditions that you're facing. So you really need to keep abreast of what's going on in the environment and what will be the future impacts from trends and different occurrences that happen. You know, like a tsunami in a particular area, and how's that going to affect your customers, and how's that going to affect your logistics and those things, and also your internal environment. There may be some key issues that you have in your internal environment, so you may want to have some key key performance indicators to stay on top of any kind of issues that can take you away from being successful. And we're going to talk about benchmarks. And what a benchmark is, it's something to compare against. And a benchmark might be an industry standard in your particular industry. You know, or an industry target that's set up in your industry. And you compare your KPI, your performance KPI against that standard, and it lets you know, are you being successful or not? And it will point you to some root causes on how you can change that and improve the business. It may be an industry average that's a benchmark, or it may be a target unique to you, your business, that you want to make sure that you excel at, because it will position your strategy, much more effectively, or position you in the market, to appear, much more desirable. And then also, there may be a company out there that's best in class, and also you want to.
Not sure if it's just me, but I can't hear you anymore.
Sorry, Kathy.
Sorry, I'm not sure if it's just me. I can't hear you anymore.
Okay, can anybody else hear me? You want to give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Because I'm not unmuted. I see myself. Yeah, see the class is hearing me. Okay. So I don't know, maybe come back in, Kathy, and that might help you. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So you may, a benchmark might be there might be a particular business. So say you're a dry cleaning business, and there might be a dry cleaning business that you think is doing so well, it's best in class. Its performance numbers are over all the dry cleaning businesses, say, in the city. So you may want to track their KPIs. Sometimes you can get, you can get their information and then compare your particular indicators against their key indicators for benchmarks to see how you can approach that and be just as good or better. All right. So that's why we're going through this exercise, and I hope you understand that piece. It's all about, making you better managers. I'll just start with a little bit of a helpful hints, hopefully. I don't know if you know this, but it's mainly C grade students in college that are predominantly more successful when they leave college. And why? It's because they understand how to deal with failure. They didn't get an A+, or they, so they found ways to improve. And that's what they call growth mindset. And you're gonna, if you want to know about this a little more, just go to that link that I gave you, 8 reasons why mindset business is important. But in the bottom, you'll see that I have a link to Carol Dweck, and Carol Dweck wrote this book called Growth Mindset. And you take a look at growth mindset versus fixed mindset. So what happens is, if you've been a successful student all the way right to the end of college, and then all of a sudden you come against something that is overwhelming, you don't have the sense, of, hey, I got to stick with this, and you may try to circumvent that in an area that's not optimized for you to be able to learn from it and get better. And we know this. We all learn from our mistakes. We learn from our failures. And in the growth mindset, we take advantage of that and improve ourselves. So all kinds of benefits for that. So the mindset determines what you focus on. It affects your work ethic, because you stick to it. You have more resilience. You may care too much about unimportant things. You start really thinking about, what's really important. What's the big prize, out there for my organization or my personal career. It helps you handle stress better. It'll get you more productive. It helps you solve business problems faster because you've been there before, and to keep your cool, and get back down to the fundamentals to do what you need to do to overcome the challenge. and then it'll affect your business relationships because people will see you as a problem solver, and because you can never, you can never be perfect all the time. You could never solve all the problems all the time, but you know how to keep at it and get through the issues. And then it'll affect your business decision making. So I wanted to leave that with you, and it's just as important to apply that in your studies right now in terms of, okay, well, maybe I'm not getting the grades that I need to, but where are my shortcomings? Where have I failed? Why? What can I learn from that? How can I be better? So mindset has a big impact on how you're going to be successful in your life and your career. Okay, so I did send you some information out of Blackboard announcements, and it's about understanding financials. And the key thing here is that this little, BDC calls it an ebook, but it's really just a real quick, good article that you can read. But it covers who uses your financials. How do they use your financials? Why are your financials there? What do they do? How do you look at it? So it's a quick read. I'd really recommend that you do read this before you start the cupcake assignment, just to really give you a grounding of what we're going through and why we're going through this. You're gonna learn about productivity in the cupcake assignment. You're gonna learn about looking at benchmarks to be able to improve your lot, and that's key. So there's the link. It's on my Google Docs. You can pull it up and have a look at it. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the participation activities in topic 6. And the first part is that you calculate cost of goods sold for this gingerbread house. And the gingerbread house that I'm giving you data on is simple. And there's a reason for this, just to go through the fundamentals, because what happens when you get, and I'll show you this as well on another slide, when you get to the cupcake assignment, you have to calculate cost of goods sold, and then you use that number to calculate gross profit, and you use that number to calculate percentage cost of goods sold. And if you don't get the right calculation, then everything else is wrong. And that's why I'm asking you to make sure that you put the formulas as subheadings, and you show those calculations, so that even though you might get the first one wrong, you'll get full marks for the rest of the calculations. So that's what I'm hoping that you're going to see out of this. But here's the information. So this is the information that you use, to be able to calculate cost of goods sold, for 60 of the above gingerbread houses. So that's the number of units that you're gonna produce. And based on your calculated cost of goods sold, you're going to calculate gross profit, and then you're going to comment on, if your gross profit is low or whatever, you'd want to look at, how you can improve your productivity, to increase those things. And I'd like you to provide at least 3 recommendations on what you need to do. Okay, so again, this is a building block. So what I recommend that you do is have a look at the group cupcake assignment again and see what's going to be required there, because you may set up a spreadsheet to do this 6A, and then you'll have that spreadsheet ready to be able to help you do it in the cupcake assignment. All right, so that's important. All right, and then on the 6B, it's another group exercise, and it's all about creating a balanced scorecard. And you need to understand, which key performance indicators or metrics that you're going to use to be able to complete this balanced scorecard for this gingerbread house business. And that's used for monitoring and control. You would take a look at the industry of gingerbread house production, and then you would compare against their benchmarks to see how well you're doing. And again, it comes back to, what gets measured gets done. I mean, that's absolutely key. Again, I see that people are still coming into the webinar, and I'll ask you, I think you can admit someone from your end, and if you could do that, instead of if I don't admit them myself and no one else does, then they're going to be stuck in the lobby, all right? So that would help me out quite a bit. I appreciate that. Okay, all right, and then your cupcake assignment is due on May the 28th. You can see that where you make that submission, and topic in topic 7. All right, so here is just the question 6 of the cupcake assignment to show you how important that the gingerbread house participation activity will help you do this. And so that you have to calculate the cost of goods sold, and then you have to calculate the cost of goods sold percentage, and then gross profit and gross profit margin. And I'll tell you right now, many people have not picked up on this. Most of the slides in the topic slide deck relate to basically just resale. And what I want you to do is pay attention to, it's a manufactured goods equation, and that's where you include direct labor. And when I talk about direct labor and cost of goods sold, it's the variable component of the labor. Seeing if you put more labor in, you create more cupcakes, you make more sales, right? And you'll see that in the farmers market piece, that they allocated 3 hours each for 20 days of selling those cupcakes. Well, lo and behold, if they would have put 4, more cupcakes would have been sold. So this is a variable component of sales labor, all right? And that's distinct from just having a sales manager or having a sales person that you give a salary. Those kind of numbers would never go into cost of goods sold. But the fact that this is variable, it's 3 hours per day, so that those 3 hours go into the cost of goods sold along with the production hours to produce, the amount of 720 units. So be very careful about how you do this. I really want you to get a good number for cost of goods sold, and then the rest will fall out, easily. Okay, so again, I've been giving you a reference, and then I've talked about what direct expenses are like. They're unlike indirect expenses. So an indirect expenses would be, the $500 that the group paid to be able to get into the farmers market. It has nothing to do with, the sales of cupcakes. Whether they sell 5 cupcakes or 500 cupcakes, that fee is fixed. It's done. So that goes nowhere near your cost of goods sold. And as well as, if you needed pots and pans to create those cupcakes, doesn't matter if you make 2 cupcakes or 3,000 cupcakes, that's a fixed cost. That does not go, into the cost of goods sold. It's all the variable direct costs that you need to be concerned with. Okay, so again, I kind of reiterated. So it's the manufactured goods. Okay, so it's cost of goods manufactured. And what does that entail? It's raw materials and direct labor. And if we were really getting into details, we would get into the variable cost of energy to make those cupcakes and everything else. We're not going there. But these are the key elements of direct costs that go into the cost of goods sold. Whereas, in retail or wholesale, they just resell. What you do is you just include your purchases. There's no labor involved. If I'm a retail clothing, I buy clothing at wholesale, and that's the only part of the cost that goes in. My labor doesn't go into that because it's administration labor to buy that stuff. Okay, so this is key. All right, to be able to understand that. And again, I've given you even more information. So I emphasize that you're going to start with 0 cupcakes, so you don't have to worry about this. But in a general formula, if you were a standard bakery, you may have some cupcakes on the shelf, and that's beginning the finished goods inventory, and then how many do you have left after you sold them? So when you subtract that, then you get the amount that you actually sold, and to understand what the cost of goods are for the cupcakes that actually got sold. And again, indirect expenses will vary proportionately to the volume of items you sell. That's what you have to keep in mind for manufacturing. So the fact that you bought equipment doesn't go into the equation. The fact that you're paying, the $500 fee for going to the farmer's market, that doesn't go into the equation. But the fact that you're paying, 3 hours for someone to sell, if you paid them 4 hours, they sell more cupcakes. That's variable. That goes in. to your cost of goods sold in this example. All right. Normally, sales doesn't go into cost of goods sold, but in this case, it does. Okay. So again, just a reiteration about that, and so that you need to differentiate cost of goods sold from operating expenses. That's what OPEX is. All right, operating expenses. And operating expenses, you know, are fixed. They're fixed costs. They don't, you know, they're not variable, and that's what goes into there. Okay, so now you're going to have to compare your cost of goods sold with the industry, and it's hard to pick, you know, the cupcake industry. So the best thing that we have is the restaurant industry. So you'll see that, you know, you're going to use this number. It's a range though, so that the cost of goods sold in food sales is 25 to 40%, right? So that you know, you're gonna use you know, this range to be able to compare your cost of goods sold against when you get into the cupcake assignment, and so you know where it is. It's going to be in this you know, commentary topic 6 presentation right here. Okay, so now we get into you know, the various ways of looking at this indicator. So you have percentage cost of goods sold, and what is that? Well, that's, you know, if you sold 5 cupcakes for $1, sales would be $5, right? But let's just say it costs you 50 cents a cupcake to make those 5 cupcakes. So your cost of goods sold would be $2.50. So $2.50 over $5, you know, $2.50 over $5 times 100, you know, is 50%, okay, or 0.5. So that's how you calculate that piece. Now on the gross profit, you take your sales, so that would be, you know, 5 cupcakes at $1 a piece. That's $5 in sales, minus 50 cents for each cupcake to cost of goods sold. That would be $2.50. So your gross profit would be $2.50. Okay, that's how that works. And then in your gross margin, what you do is you take your sales of $5, you know, minus $2.50 for producing those 5 cupcakes over $5, and your gross margin is, you know, 0.5 or 50% again. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now, any questions about that at all? You can unmute and ask me a question. Any questions at all? We're all good? I'll go to the next one. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. All right, so the next thing is I'm going to ask you to create a balance scorecard, and I'm going to ask you to use the template that I have the link for. All right, so use this template. Don't use your own template, and then it really gives me a good sense of how to compare what's going on, and it'll help you. You know, help me help you. All right, and so that you're going to have to pick some key performance indicators to be able to put in that balance scorecard. And then you're going to have to measure, and you make some assumptions. Okay, you make some assumptions and you measure, you know, that against a particular production goal. And then you're going to make a comment about how can you improve profitability. And if you take a look at these kind of questions, you know, they're going to come back up in the cupcake assignment. So by doing a good job here, you know, you're going to be in good stead to be able to do a good job, you know, on the group cupcake assignment. Okay, so here's the balance scorecard, and I'm going to explain this balance scorecard, you know, more in more detailed fashion with an illustration. But I'll just, you know, kind of point you in the right direction here. So there's 4 main categories in a balance scorecard. There's the finances, there's things about the customers, there's things about processes, and mainly their internal processes, and there's things about your organization called learning and growth, right? And you're going to have, you know, an objective on, you know, sort of a productivity objective and a growth, you know, in terms of sales or whatever strategy. And then you're going to, and then so if it's a sales strategy, it's going to be dollars, right? Sales dollars, that's your KPI. And then you're going to set a goal for that. And then you're going to assume that you did so much to date, and then that gives you a score. So this over this gives you this score. And then in terms of percentages, then you can do a mean performance of your indicators in each category. Okay, so that's, And I'm going to show you a calculation at the end of this presentation as well that goes through that. But this is what you're going to have to do for 6B, but only for 6B, I want you to work on the finances and the customers. We're not going to get into the processes and learning and control. So, but show me the whole template and show me what you've done here, right? That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so here are some key performance indicators, some examples like revenue per client or revenue growth, you know, maybe 10% per year or something, or profit margin, or client retention rate, customer satisfaction score, current ratio. And again, you're going to learn about these ratios, you know, as we get into topic 6, and I'm going to give you some additional information. And what I recommend as well is that go back to the topic 6 slide deck to find out more, and go back to the video files that Professor Powers have done to really kind of put you up to speed on this. Okay, because we're not an accounting course, but we want you to, you know, learn enough to understand how to manage performance and ergo do the right kind of management principles type effect on your organization. Okay, so here's where I'm helping you a little bit more. I've added a checklist. You know, this document will give you better ideas on, you know, it's a practical guide on to find, you know, different KPIs for your business. And that's just for support. You know, you don't have to, there's no test in here involved, or there's no things that I'm going to be looking for. It's really just to help you. And so here's what the illustration looks like for a balanced scorecard. You can see this is financial. This is internal business processes. This is customer, and this is learning and growth. So I'm going to skip to that. I'm going to go right to that piece so that I can show you in you know, what it looks like. Okay, there it is. All right. So that you can see that, you know, you set some key objectives, and then you find a measure, which is a key performance indicator. Now, they got to be key. And then you set a target for that. And then you may have some supporting initiatives to get you to reach those targets. So, you know, there may be a couple of action plans, or there may be, you know, an audit that you could do to help you, you know, realize the, you know, better controls or whatever it takes to increase your performance to meet those targets. That's what those initiatives are about. And lo and behold, look at this, all right? It's vision and strategy driven, each one of these. So you really have to keep an eye on, you know, what is it? What are the desired end results that I have to shoot for? And that's how I'm going to set my targets for these 4 categories. The next one is internal business processes. And we know that if you don't have good processes that support your capabilities, well, how are you ever going to meet your customer targets and your financial targets? So that's why that's really important. And then on the customer side, you know, what do they want? You know, how, you know, what are they looking for in terms of what's you know, what's value in their eyes? How are you going to bring them value? How are they, you know, what triggers their customer satisfaction? What makes them more loyal? So, you know, that's in your objectives here. Well, you'll find measures to do that. You set targets to do that, and then you may have some supporting action plans or initiatives that allow you to meet those particular objectives. Again, I'm going to show you a breakdown, you know, from goals to objectives to action plans and stuff, to be able to you know, to understand how this all connects. And then learning and growth. So this came out, I think, in about the 80s, this balanced scorecard, and was created by Kaplan and Norton out of Harvard. And they called it learning and growth. But really what it is, it's organizational capacity, right? And what I mean by organizational capacity is that, you know, do you have the core competencies in your organization to be able to achieve all your targets, you know, to be able to execute? Do you have engaged and motivated and inspired employees, right? And that's all to do, you know, if they're more motivated, they're going to be more productive. That gives you more organizational capacity. So if you go to Google or anywhere else, you'll see this term, but you see this term popping up, organizational capacity. So in my later slides, I'll show you that I'm using both of them. Okay, and the whole reason why this came about, in a nutshell, is that back in the 1970s, everyone was rewarded on what they call top line revenue. Didn't matter what the costs were. It was like if you were bringing in more revenue to the organization, you're rewarded. So people got, they weren't disciplined. And what they did was a salesperson would sell something, even if they weren't making money on it, because top line revenue gave that salesperson a bonus. Or they would sell things that maybe were of less quality, and yeah, they'd get the revenue and their bonus, but maybe a year later, the customer maybe wanted to return most of the stuff because it was poor quality. So Kaplan and Norton said, okay, we got to find a way to balance this off so that the customer is really getting what they want, and it's a sustainable effort for the organization, and that's how they came up with the balanced scorecard. Okay, so here's the template again, just going to show you. And what you're going to have to do is, and I've got an updated template. This is 2022, but your template will say 2024. What's the goal for whatever key performance indicator you had to satisfy this objective? And then how, to date, how much have you performed? So let's say the goal was, 40% sales growth and you achieved 20%. Well, then your score would be 50%, right? 20 divided by 40 times 100. And then the productivity, your productivity score was 30%. So 30 plus 50 is 80 divided by 2. So your mean performance would be 40, right? So that's how you calculate that. Okay, and let me talk about risks now. I'm going to flip a little back and forth, from the performance piece to the risk piece. But you'll notice that these are all highlighted, which means that there's some content here you should really understand. And you got to understand a difference. Well, first of all, you have to understand the many types of risks. And then you understand the difference between speculative and market risk and pure risk. And the thing is that pure risk is that you don't know. There's just so much uncertainty. But speculative and market risk, you've got you've got some sense of how you can mitigate that risk, how you can work around that risk, or how you can cope with that risk when it comes. And so that pure risk, and that could be property risk, or it could be a liability risk or personnel risk or whatever. It's when people managing organizations take a big risk and aren't even aware. They're not even making an educated guess of what's going on. They just think, high risk, high reward. And we've seen this in that max and mini max, and you're going to be accountable for on the test, right? And so that max. So they go all out, and what happens is a big, large, significant thing happens that they didn't anticipate, and they could possibly lose the company, right? So that's the kind of the bookends on where that looks at. But how do you deal with risk management? Well, first you need to identify it and understand these risks, and that takes a lot more because things happen so quickly in our new world, and you really need to take a look at different types of scenarios to really understand the possibilities of risk, and then start quantifying that. So you identify and you understand those risks, then you evaluate the potential severity of risk, and in where I came from and tell us what we would do is, well, we were all responsible for risk across the company. It wasn't just the accountants that are responsible for risk. And we had to take a look at environmental risk and reputational risk and our procedural risks. And we had to develop a heat map. And what a heat map was, it was 3 colors. Red was, hey, this is really important and it may be happening right now and we're dealing with it. Yellow was, oh, this might be an impending risk and we have to worry about it. And green would be, oh, no, we're okay here. We don't need to worry about that. And we would update that risk map, I think every 3 months or whatever, and show our superiors that we were on top of things. So you identify and understand the risk, you evaluate the potential severity of the risk, and that's where you could do that heat map that I told you about, and then you select methods to manage that risk, and we call that risk mitigation. And then you implement the decisions and then you keep on reviewing your assumptions and the performance around managing that risk. And if the risk gets out of control, it means something's changed, and then you determine, do we recalibrate? Do we reevaluate, the merits of what we're doing to mitigate that risk and those kind of things. So that's the process. And so here's, again, we've got some highlighting. So here's the strategies. One is avoidance. Choose not to engage in risky activities. So I'll give you an example. So I don't know if you've heard about Cirque du Soleil, but it's sort of the new type of circus, where Barnum and Bailey way back when, 100 years ago or whatever, they had a 3-ring circus and they had animals, right? Cirque du Soleil decided specifically they were not going to have animals in their circus. That's avoidance. They choose not to engage in that risky activities. Why? Because animal rights organizations and the standards and the risk of penalties and being tied up in court, they didn't want to do that, so they avoided it. The next one is mitigation. So there's a lot of good points on here, reducing the possibility or severity of loss. So, you can do loss prevention. And loss prevention is driver training, say. So a lot of trucking companies right here in Alberta, they'll do spot drug tests of their drivers. And these drivers know they're going to be a spot. They just don't know when they're going to happen. And so they're drug free. And that reduces, that's loss prevention. It reduces the possibility of any kind of traffic accidents. And then loss reduction. Well, then that's where you protect it. So you might have security fences or security guards or first aid training or crisis planning or all those kind of things to be able to, reduce the amount of loss that's possible because of, a happening. And that's all part of mitigation. And then there's transfer. And that's why you buy insurance, all right? Or you sign a contract so others pay the financial cost of loss. So there's ways of, end running that either by picking up insurance or negotiating some of your business deals where the third party or the other party has to handle the loss piece. So that's transfer. And then assumption, so that's where you take on that thing. So the financial loss intentionally, is taken on intentionally. I'll give an example. So myself as a consumer, I do not buy, extended warranties on any kind of appliance that I purchase. And so what does that mean? I'm assuming the risk. Normally those appliances, they have a 1-year warranty. And normally if something's going to happen with appliances, it'll go in the first year. And so far it's worked well for me because being self-insured, I've never had to, up until now, touch wood, right, that I've never had to, come up with some repairs for a particular appliance. They've gone their life cycle, and then they just got replaced. So those are the key pieces that you need to know. Then you're going to have to do a balance sheet. You need to understand what the balance sheet is all about. And then I'll take you back to the BDC ebook that you have the link for, not only in this presentation, but I sent it to you, in your Blackboard announcements, so you could go there and get that link. Have a look at that, and you'll understand, what those various components in the balance sheet, and the income statement do for your business and how it helps you measure and manage the performance based on different benchmark or standards. And the thing to know about the balance sheet is a moment in time. So normally organizations do their balance sheet that reflect the last day of the year, like December 31st, 2024. And that's where that things were at that time. And 2 days later, it might be different, right? But it gives you a lock in time, and you get a good sense of where your assets are based on where the inventory or accounts receivable and those kind of things versus where your liabilities are and your owner's equity. And I'm going to explain that just a little bit more. But again, this is not an accounting course, but you need to do this to be able to calculate your 15 financial ratios. And I'm going to help you with that because I've got some additional information, in your cupcake assignment. Okay, so here it is. I want you to use this template in your cupcake assignment. There's the link to it. And then you fill this out, and then this is going to help you calculate some of your key ratios that you're going to have to compare against an industry benchmark. Okay, so here just a little more explanation. So if you take a look at current liabilities, well, those are short term, they're 12 months or less. If you look at long-term debt, well, that's 5 years and plus. If you look at shareholders' equity, well, that's the financing. Is your financing done? If you've sold shares, do you have preferred stockholders, and those kind of things. So that gives you a sense of what these are all about. And then in the income statement, it shows a company's revenues and expenses and profitability over a period of time, like a year in most cases. And it also sometimes called a profit and loss statement. And it shows your revenue from selling products or services and expenses to generate, the revenues and manage your business. So this is a very telling part of your business to make sure that yes, you are profitable. And you really need to understand, fixed versus variable costs. And again, if you're going to calculate cost of goods sold, those are variable, inputs to that. Versus, on overhead is more of a fixed thing. Your overhead might be rent, so that's $1,200 a month. Whether you sell 5 cupcakes or 2,000, it doesn't matter. You're still going to pay that amount for the rent, or insurance, or truck insurance, or whatever. So what it does do, though, is that it gives you a sense of knowing how your profitability can be improved. There's only really 2 ways to improve your profitability. One is you increase your sales, or you decrease your expenses, right? And that's the first place to start, is you take a look at, and in most cases, you take a look at your overhead expenses, because those are the ones that are not related to production, so that you have a chance to, you might say, oh, well, you know what, maybe I'm going to leave out a clause in my insurance, and my overall business insurance will be, and that's the risk and you're assuming it, my insurance can be reduced by 10%, right? So it's easier to reduce overhead expenses. If you start reducing direct expenses, in terms of the ingredients, well, then you're suffering quality, or you got to limit your production. So variable expenses are a really difficult thing to work on. So that's why we talk about overhead or operating expenses that way. Okay. So here's some examples of that. Insurance, legal fees, license fees, utilities, travel, property taxes, those kind of things. Okay. So now here's where you're going to get marked on in the cupcake assignment. And I want to caution you right now. So you won't see any non-operating income, and you won't see any non-operating expenses in the cupcake thing. I want you to put 0 here. I still want you to include those. If you don't include those at 0, then you're going to lose a couple of marks. Okay, so just to let you know that that's what that is. So what will happen is, by filling out these pieces, you're going to be able to calculate different things that are required on the cupcake assignment. So we're going to, how do you calculate a profit margin? How do you calculate an operating profit margin? Those kind of things. This one isn't key, but these are. All right. So you're going to look at selling costs, selling and marketing over sales, other overhead minus sales marketing. So this is just to make you aware that there's other profitability measures. But say myself, when I was at TELUS, we used to call it EBITDA, but it's EBITDA, and it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, and it's a rough estimate of cash generated by operations, right? So it really gives you a sense of where the cash flow, and there's a saying in North America, cash is king, and if you don't watch your cash flow, you can get into a lot of trouble. All right, so just so you know that. And what amortization means, it means expensing intangible assets, non-physical assets like, patents or trade names, or, customer lists or contracts or franchise agreements. So those kind of costs go into there, to calculate your EBITDA, all right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about finances. You need startup money, right? And then you need money ongoing. And here's the thing to remember in general, all right? You need to increase your revenue on an ongoing basis. Why? Because costs are always going up, and they're going up continually, right? So understand that. So you need a plan where you need revenue growth and more sales to be able to deal with the increase in costs. And the thing is, need to understand that you have startup money for all these incidentals that you need to get your business going, and then you need to understand sometimes you need one-time costs versus ongoing. So if you decide you're going to build a building when you're going to start up your business, well, building a building is a one-time cost, whereas ongoing, you're always going to be paying electricity, you're always going to be paying licenses, all those kind of things. And then you need to understand what's fixed versus variable. Okay, so again, fixed costs would be you're making cupcakes. Well, your fixed costs are the pans and the spatula and the measurement equipment and that. Those are all fixed. You're going to pay, let's say, $300 for all those things I just mentioned, whether you make 5 cupcakes or 500 cupcakes, right? So that's fixed. But on the variable side, well, you make more cupcakes, you need to buy more sugar. If you make more cupcakes, you need to buy, more of those little paper things that cupcakes go into when they go into the pan, because you need one for each cupcake that you make. Or you're going to need, I don't know, more flour, right? Those are all variable costs. And then you got to determine, well, which costs are essential versus which costs are optional. And when I say optional, I mainly think about what can you defer. So you're saying, you know what, we should buy a new delivery truck. Well, what's wrong with our old delivery truck? Well, it's getting up there and we're paying a little more maintenance, but we don't have enough money, or we don't want to go to the bank and create a new loan right now. So we'll defer that decision to maybe the year after next, and make do and try to manage our maintenance costs on our old truck, right? So that's what that's all about. Okay, so how do you finance your business? Well, there's debt financing, that's where you borrow money, and then equity financing, that's where you find people to give you money, like stockholders. So they give you money for the shares that you sell them. And then there's preferred stockholders, and there's a reason why they call it preferred. They may be non-voting, but they're the first people to get any kind of a profit from your organization. That's why it says preferred. Or if you say the company goes bankrupt and so much of the company has to go to creditors, well, they're the first of the stockholders to get any part of that remaining money of that organization. When it comes to debt financing, you need to understand, what's the difference between short-term, they call it securities, but short-term loans versus intermediate loans, and especially long-term loans, long-term securities. And you'll find in accounting what they teach you is you need to match that. So you match your short-term revenues to your short-term loans. You match your long-term revenues and long-term costs to your long-term loans, and that has to fit, and that gives you continuity in the business. And so that in terms of debt financing, it could be you sell bonds, or you do some financing based on your assets. You take a mortgage, on your building, but you would probably take a chattel mortgage on your equipment or your vehicles to be able to borrow money, as security to get your business going and running. Okay, so this is just a little piece of my experience. I spent I think 20 years on board of directors, and especially in the credit union, and what I learned from the lending managers is that I used to ask them, well, what are some of the key issues, and what you need to look for as a small business? And a lot of small businesses, especially what they call mom and pop businesses. They've borrowed from relatives or their parents to start that business. And then it'll get to the point where they may want to expand that business and they can't go back to their relatives because now that's a greater leap to take. So they'll go to a financial institution. And what will the financial institution say? Well, you don't have a track record. How do I know that you can repay you got this money from family. Did you repay them? Right. So what I'm saying here is that if you've got a growth goal for your business in mind, start doing some financial lending, financial institution lending early in the game, so that when you need that next big lump to be able to go to the next level of your business growth, you'll have the track record, and that's key to understand when you're doing that. Okay, so sources of equity, where can you get equity? Well, one is, if you're a large company, you can go to the stock market and you could launch an IPO, an initial public offering. So it just shows you, here's our company, here's what we're all about. We want to sell you these shares starting at $40 a share. Wow, this takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of logistics, and you have to be a fairly large organization to be able to make this happen, period. So the SCOR, it's a small company offering registration, come together and allow smaller companies to issue stock, so they don't have the resources to do all that. So it makes it easier for them to be able to do that, on a better basis. And then there's small business investment companies that they'll invest in small companies. Venture capitalist firms, if you're looking for rapid growth, but I'd say be cautious about venture capitalist firms, because they may want a piece of your business. They may want a piece of your profits, and if you're going to deal with a venture capitalist, make sure that you've got a good lawyer and a good accountant to strike up a reasonable deal for yourself, because you'll be on the losing end of that deal. It's my opinion, right? And then there's angel investors, and I'm sure that there are some rich people or people in the community, maybe from oil and gas or landowners. They have a lot of capital, and they're willing to lend, to small business or entrepreneurs, if they feel it's a good risk. And that's what angel investors do. They're high income individuals, but they're looking for high return, and they're willing to take some high risk, because high risk, high returns. And then you could work with your employees, and this is probably one of the better ways of if you're going to grow this business and growing it right, get the employees on the ground floor to invest in your business, and you can get money from that in terms of employee stock ownership plans. You may opt to maybe pay them less and provide them with stock options. There's those kind of opportunities that are there. And then there's profitability for investors. How do they know how well you're doing? Well, the stock analysts or whatever start looking at your financials, and they take a look at earnings per share. So if you got 40,000 shares out there, and you have certain profits, they'll divide that entire profit by the number of shares, and that gives you the earning per share. And then there's different categories to show, and especially if you've got a track record of growing your earnings per share, well, then you've got a winning combination to have a chance to maybe increase your share price and bring in more equity, at a reasonable cost as well. So those are the kind of things that you should look at. And again, because of preferred shares, they have payout priority. That doesn't that part of the net income is taken out to be able to represent that. Okay, so we got price earnings ratio. I'm not going to talk about that too much. There's not very much highlighting going on here. But here's a little bit of a breakdown on what that balance sheet is all about. On this side, you take a look at how are your assets being used. On this side, how do we get money and use money to run the business, right? So that's what this is all about. So it's a snapshot of how assets are being used, a gauge of financial health. It's a one moment in time, and it gives you an idea of what your owner's equity is about, how much money you have in the business that's there. Okay. And again, so you're going to hear about this a lot. It's all about asset management. It's all part of managing the business properly. It's all about, those management principles, putting them into play. And you need to understand different things. How fast are you spending your cash? That's a burn rate. Is cash being used faster than it's generated? Well, that means then, you're going to be into a negative cash situation. When you're into a negative cash situation, your lender's going to be watching you pretty closely. And if they see that, we said cash is king, if you don't have cash on hand, then they're going to say, you know what, maybe it's time you better pay back your loan, and you're on the path to going out of business, all right? Inventory turnover, that's really key. And I think I've mentioned this many times, but, inventory, there's so much money tied into inventory. It's not just the product itself, it's the building, it's the insurance, it's the heating, it's the security for that building. That's all what we call working capital. And the less inventory, the less cost of product itself, and the less cost to maintain that product, that all goes into profitability. And that profitability could be invested in more technology or paid better to shareholders, right? And inventory could be up to 65% of your product cost. And that, that's a North American figure. And so just think, that's why they brought in, lean production, right? And just-in-time inventory, so that, you can reduce that inventory cost everywhere. And that way, you're running a better, stronger, faster business. Okay, so that's what that's all about. And you take a look at inventory turns, and I told you, that you set your key performance indicator targets, not only based on your unique business requirements, but on the industry. And you'll even if you're deciding that you want to go into a business, look at the industry KPIs of each industry to decide, is this the industry I want to be into? Because look at in inventory turns, you'll see that retail inventory turn is much smaller than technology or transportation or financial or services, which means that they have to restock every month, and you really need to watch your cash flow. So the higher your inventory turns means the less managing of the less working capital that you need. Okay, so that's really important. Okay, and again now take a look in terms of cash flow analysis. In terms of day to pay, specific customers slow in paying you what they owe. Well, that can affect how much cash you have in the organization. All right, so I have these addendum slides. I've given you, I've kind of repeated this, suggestions how you can better succeed in preparing for the test. We talked about that, but I want to show you the connections, of what you're going to need to know. I wanted to show you, how, you go from, your vision statement to your mission statement to your critical success factors that break up, that down to key areas that you're going to work in, that breaks down your vision into components. We call this, just chunking, right? And then what you can have here is that, on this particular focus area, so let's just say that, it's, you're a startup, coffee business. Well, one of your focus areas might be, out and out marketing, to build up your market share. That's a focus area. And then you may have a key goal for building your market share. And then you break that goal down because it's still too big, and you chunk it into 3 objectives. Because now people can see that, yeah, we can achieve this objective. This is, the overall goal may look a little bit overwhelming, but if you break it into chunks, then you can see that, yeah, this is doable. And so then for these objectives, you have targets that you set up and measures, which are key performance indicators. And then you set particular, particular goals and objectives, for those KPIs to get that done. This all breaks down into kind of an umbrella thing. here's the here's the actual balanced scorecard template. And this is an older one, but I gave you a link to the more revised one. And here's how I want you to do that. For the cupcake assignment, I've said only pick up 2 of the 4 areas for the balanced scorecard. And so that I'm going to ask you to come up with, maybe a productivity KPI, and maybe a sales KPI or a market share, and set a goal for it, and then have an assumption on, what's the results to date, so that you can actually score. You can see the result to date. Well, you did 10% over a 20% target. That's a 50% score. And then in this category, maybe there's 5 or 6 different elements here. This is just 2 right now. So you add up the scores, and then you divide them by the number of scores to get the mean performance. And now this is a bird's eye view or an overview of where the company is going, to get a sense of, hey, you're doing really well with customers. Maybe we could do a lot better in finance. Okay, that's the piece that you need to go to. So now what I'm doing is I'm getting into the strategy map, and we're just going to take a quick break. All right, so I'm just going to stop. It's 2:03 right now. I'm going to come back at 2:10. Okay, and then get into the strategy map, so it'll give us a chance to do something. And Joy, I see you have a hand up. Did you want to unmute and ask a question?
Hi, sir. There's a question in the chat regarding the group work on 6B. Can you please address it? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll address that before we go for a break then. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Okay, wanted to confirm that our group worked on 6B, and according to the instructions in Blackboard, we only focus on the processes and customer categories. However, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. That's good. It's the processes and the customer categories, not the sale, not the financials. Yeah, so this is true. Okay, so no, you're all good. All right, so I'll retract. Just read the instructions and go from there. Okay, I was doing that based on memory, and that was a mistake on my part. I apologize. Okay, so it's 2:04. Yeah, we'll come back at 2:10 and go from there. Okay, so I'm just going to mute, and I'm going to take my camera off here. So any questions before I get started? Any of you have any questions? And I'm watching the chat here now. If you want to put it in the chat as well, I can talk to it. Again, I understand this is a lot of information, so that's why, you know, I'm trying to show you there's the highlights where you can focus your studies on, and then sometimes I have what I call the golden arrows, you know, the yellow arrows that point to things. Sometimes I have these golden keys, and then sometimes I have, you know, emboldened writing down beside the highlighted areas or whatever. So those are the telltale things that you need to get back to you get back to the topic of slide decks. And then if you need more information, you go to the videos that Professor Powers had created. And then lo and behold, you know, you can go back to the course outline, and most topics have recommended reading in the e-text that's associated with Pearson Revel. Okay, so that's where all that comes about. So, and again, you can always, you know, please ask me questions and I'll elaborate more on what's going on. So I wanted to show you the connection between balanced scorecard right here, right, and the balanced scorecard strategy map, you know, BSC balanced scorecard strategy map. And this is really to kind of give you a sense of how this is done and how you can manage better alignment. You know, and I keep saying, you know, alignment is power in getting to the outcomes, because if you get everybody going in the same direction with all their talents and coordinated and collaborated, you know, you can have amazing results. So if you take a look at the top of here is the financial aspects of what's, you know, of the BSC. This next one here, all right, is the customer aspects. You know, this one here is this one, and then the next one is internal business processes, and then the next one you can see where I actually used you know, my terminology as well. That's the newer terminology. I have learning and growth, which really is organizational capacity. So okay, so here's where I start, is that understand that they're layered there purposefully, and this little drawing kind of gives you the idea. So what you start with is that you have, you know, the internal capacity to get all these other things done, and it's really important to show which goals are foundations for which goals. So you can see here, let me just use this. Okay, so here's a goal in learning and growth. So it's to recruit highly qualified employees. Well, what will the result of highly qualified employees be? Well, it will lead to better best practices and better processes, because you have more talent to be able to do that. So your internal processes become more robust. So what then happens is, if you have more robust processes, well, then you can satisfy your customers and your clients much better. And then, you know, from there, you know, that could lead, you know, to more revenue, right? So that's why you need these arrows, and I'm going to ask you to put these arrows in place, you know, in your, you know, in the requirements in those assignments. And you can see even, you know, this goal needs this goal, right? You can see that arrow going that way. This goal needs this goal. And what I found, you know, I've been doing strategic planning since about 1986. And what I found is that a lot of times that goals are set in different work departments just by brainstorming, and they really don't have all the information. And their goals are set independent of other departments, and nobody's tying this together. So you may have competing goals, right, in one way, so that you may have two departments competing for the same resources, unbeknownst to them, because they set their goals. And then you may have goals that they set that they just can't achieve because they don't have any foundational resources to get them on the go. They'll say, well, you know, we're going to get into AI, but nobody's trained in AI, and you don't have any AI specialists. So from a organizational capacity, one of the first goals, or from learning and growth, is hire an AI specialist, right? So that's why it's important to really understand the flow of what's going on. And I'll tell you, like, when I learned this, it really set me on another level in terms of helping organizations and showing how everything ties back together. Planning is all about understanding interdependencies. Interdependencies is all about systems thinking, and you'll be able to appreciate the overall flow of things that will allow you to have better alignment. That's what that's all about. So let me go back to this, where we started. So when you do a strategy map, there's a slide in your slide deck in topic 6, there's common mistakes, goals without connections. You have to see how they're connected so you can exploit the synergies between those goals. Focusing on operational goals when a particular goal should be maybe on systemic type goals or whatever. There's no rationale. They brainstorm, they think it's a good idea. Using lagging metrics only, and we're going to talk about lagging metrics, but lagging, a typical one is, your sales returns. They're always a historical, right? We don't have May sales data for May because we're in May. We'll only get those sales data in June. All right, so that's a lagging metric, and that's I don't know if you've ever heard this expression, but managing in the rear view mirror, and you have to depend on the trends that the historical data is holding. And if those trends aren't holding, and in our world, it's so volatile, most trends don't hold anymore, well, then you really need leading metrics. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, okay? And then only having a top level map. So, these strategy maps, as the goals cascade down the organization, there should be a balanced scorecard at that level of that division or that sub-organization, and see how they all map, and how they map all the way up to the overall corporate goals of the organization and the vision of the organization. Having too many goals, I'll show you my little planning view, later on in the slides on the Franklin Institute research. If you have too many goals, you can't reach excellence on any one of those goals. There's too many preoccupations, and you're spread out. And then mixing goals and metrics, and then using business jargon. So those are kind of the things about that. So here you are, lagging indicators. I talked about that, like sales, but a leading indicator is something that will give you advance notice. So I'll briefly, kind of explain, just the sales funnel. So you have at the top, you have leads, sales leads, right? Let's say it's 1,000 sales leads. Well, then you want to convert those leads into qualified customers. And you have 1,000 leads, and from those 1,000 leads, you may qualify 100 customers. And then you set up visits for those 100 customers, and you may make 10 sales. So what I've given you is a hit rate of 10 to 1. So you need 10 leads for every qualification, and then you need 10 qualifications for every sale, right? And so that if you want to triple your goals, well, you can measure the leads coming in. You want to triple the amount of leads that are coming in. That's a leading indicator, okay? So that's how that works. And there's things in your process where you can get a view of the outcomes a little beforehand. And I'm gonna show you another slide where, if you have problems in the system, if you could find out beforehand, it'll save you a lot more money than at the end if you just discovered it, because of a lagging indicator. So that's important. So this is my little mental model here that I talk about all the time. It's for my company, I've created these business knowledge maps. Again, where are you now? Where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? And you can see that this is the current state. It's really important to have that baseline, know where you're at. But getting back to, if you have too many goals, I got this from the Franklin Institute. if you've got, if you set yourself 11 to 20 goals, and this is just in their general research, that's why they got these numbers, you would probably achieve excellence in 0 of them. But if you lower the number of goals, say 4 to 10, you may achieve excellence in 1 or 2 of them. But if you lower them to wildly important goals, and that's their 4DX approach to setting goals, then you can achieve excellence in all of them, right? So that's key. And then the next thing is that this is a Stephen Covey chart, and what you have here is that you have increasing importance and increasing urgency. So you're always normally working in quadrant 1, where if something's really important and it's really urgent to get done. And we tend as people to stay too much in that area. But if we want to build foundation, for growth, we need to work on important things that are not so urgent. And this kept coming up in different areas that I got onto. It's the 30% factor. We should be spending at least 30% of our time on issues and opportunities that are really important but not urgent, so that we can get there. Otherwise, we'll never get there. We'll always be, in the swamp, up to our waist in alligators. All right, so that's where number 1 will keep you. These other quadrants, you never ever want to be in quadrant 3, where it's not important and it's not urgent. And and here's where we get stuck with email sometimes. So just so you know that. So here's this drawing that I showed you, and again, it's the connections, all right, that you need. That's where you do the critical thinking. That's where you see how am I going to get this done? Well, it all starts down here. I'm going to get this done through these efforts, and so that you know how to get there, and then it makes it more plausible. And the more that your workforce understands that it's doable, the more that they'll be encouraged and motivated to get to the end. If they think it's overwhelming, you'll have some people that will cop out. They'll say, this never can be done. Why are we wasting our efforts, right? So it's all to do with execution. Okay, so here I've made this drawing a little bigger so that you could see it. Here's an example that I actually did, I guess, for a particular client. And then, so what do you need to do in that strategy map? Well, you definitely have to define the mission and the vision and the values. That's why I kind of took you along this line here. Oops, where are we here? So here, we have the organization vision, and the core values drive the mission statement. The mission is, that's what we do around here, and core values shape our behaviors, whether we know it or not. And that's where these things come in. So let's get back to that. So define our 4 perspectives. So we said that: financial, customer, internal processes, learning and growth, which is equally called organizational capacity. Define our strategic priorities. Those are the goals. Define our strategic business goals. Describe the rationale for why you pick those goals. Define the metrics itself. Set the targets. Those targets will be complemented. The metrics will be complemented by the things that you do, the action plans, the initiatives, and then cascade the strategy maps for each business unit. Right. This goes down the level. So each level is doing its bit to complete the requirements for the level above it. So it might be a small production unit that is doing things so that the overall production department can get stuff done, and the production department gets this stuff done so that it will allow the sales organizations and the general management to get all the things done in the company to support the customer. That's the way it kind of works. Okay, so now I'm just going to flip you back to risks, and just understand that you really need to continuously monitor external and internal environments. Remember, I told you, when you look at the decisions that you're going to make, when you look at the key performance indicators, you need to look at what's unique to the business, and that may be, it could be internal. Maybe there's some internal things that you really need to measure to make sure that you've got the capabilities to execute. And then there's the industry. And then there's the conditions. And the conditions are in, the external and the internal environments. Okay. So initiate, what if discussions. And this is going to become more and more important, in AI, because AI is going to allow you to, construct scenarios to evaluate. And the thing is, will you have to plan for each scenario? No, it's the rich discussions amongst, the people in the organization, amongst the various departments that create insights so that when something does happen, you can respond. You've thought about it, it's in the back of your head, or you've prepared for it because maybe something's in the discussion pointed out to some deficiencies in what you're doing, and you shore that up, to mitigate risks. So this all, comes together and helping you when you do these what if discussions, and then, gather input from the stakeholders and then identify, those particular risks. And essentially, this is where, I talk about the heat map, where you do an actual heat map on risks. So now, when we talk about, the 4 areas, so, I've flipped around a little bit here, so I just want to go back to this. Okay, we talked about avoidance, mitigation, transfer, and assumption, all right? So now we're talking about transfer here. Oops. Okay, so types of insurance. And there's various kinds where we can transfer that in terms of something goes wrong with our property, well, someone will pay for our loss. General liability, automobile, workers' compensation, for fraud or whatever, employment practices. So there's all kinds in that piece. And I think that's it for topic 6. All right, so I'm going to start topic 7. And then maybe half hour into topic 7, we'll take a break. Topic 7 is not as long as topic 6, so we'll have a little bit of a reprieve here as well. And again, the test can start as early as 4 o'clock. Any questions at all? Any questions? You can unmute. I see there's nothing in the chat here. All good? Okay. Okay, topic 7. Okay, how to manage human resources. And this is key. It all comes down to people, right? So that's what this topic is going to be about. And let's just take a look at, what are the deliverables in this week for topic 7. Well, whoops, your cupcake assignment is not done. That needs to be updated, right? Sorry. You need to start your cupcake assignment. You had participation topics 7A and 7B. And then there's all these different Rebel surveys that you need to go through, and it'll give you, a lot of the HR information about yourself to be able to absorb what's going on. So what we're going to do here is for 7A, again, it's a group exercise, and I want you to submit at least 5 ideas, in a table, and you try to emulate these tables, and a short sentence by each thing, where you take a look at the ideas for motivating employees in a large international business. This is going to help you, when you're looking at your Amazon group project assignment, and then ideas for motivating employees in a family business, and just short reasons why you chose those particular ideas, and why, again, trying to get you to think about, think critically. Why are you doing that? Why does it matter? Maybe how are you going to do that? What do you expect from it? Those are the kind of things, but a short reason, right? And then I want you to make the differentiation of between working in a large international business and a family business. Because what I've seen in the exercises, there's one question saying, would you operate differently, between family business and Amazon? And the thing is that you're the same person, you have the same set of values. Yes, I get that. But most people would say, no, I operate the same way. And that's not that's not completely accurate. What you need to do is, given the conditions inside of a family business, how decisions are made, how information is processed, how you get things done, versus in a corporation where there's a lot of automation and everything else, your management style may have to change. And again, premier HR consulting firms, global consulting firms say that you should have at least 4 management styles that you're comfortable with. Yes, we all have our predominant management style. That's who we are, and that's how we like to operate. And that our predominant management style really helps us make the decision to which organization to get in the first place. But because you could use that style a lot more and more effectively. But having said that, wherever you go, it's situation analysis. It's the answer is it depends. So you may have a circumstance where you have to apply a different style to be able to engage and motivate people. And that's what I'm getting you to get at in terms of differentiating between how you would motivate employees in a large business versus a small business. Okay, a small business, you have less resources. You have less capability of doing financial rewards. So those are the kind of things I want you to think about. Okay, this next one is that there's two. Just remember, there's 2 deliverables here. One is to create a job description, and what I'd like you to do is to use this template. You can recreate it, all right, in Word or whatever, and then do the job description, and then the second one is develop interview questions, no more than 1 page, but again, pick out that specific job description, and you may go back to that earlier business that you picked in participation 3 and 4 to think of what kind of job to put in there, and then work from there, and make those interview questions relevant to the company that you've chosen and to the type of job description the type of job that you need to support. Okay, here's a key thing, all right, and you notice that this is a highlight. When you want to define performance, performance is ability times motivation. Ability times motivation. So what you're looking for, in this job description and in your interviews is, you're setting, what are the motivating factors in there? What abilities are you looking for? What skills, those kind of things, in terms of related to the key responsibilities and accountabilities to be able to define the performance of that particular job. Okay, and just remember this: employees, they leave their bosses. They don't leave the organization. This happened. It even happened to me. My last job that I left, it was my boss. We didn't work to the core values that we were meant to satisfy, and I just couldn't handle it. And I called him up one day and said, "Joe, I think it's time for me to leave." And then 3 months later, I left the organization, and it was because Joe wanted to get maximize the sales regardless of how we did it, and that didn't work for me. All right, so that's where we went. Okay, so here's this: a Gallup study of managers. The manager accounts for at least 70% of the variance in employee engagement. So you can see how important your skills, your capabilities, and your approach, your mindset has an effect. And to be able to drive engagement. Okay, but leadership matters more. That's the key thing. And look at this. So leaders have a much stronger effect on employee commitment levels. And that's what I'm saying is that it used to be leaders and managers, and today it's leaders and managers in all aspects. And if you're lower down in the organization, you may be managing more and leading less, but you need to understand how to connect that information and how to execute on the emotional side of the business, so to speak. Right, so it's still important no matter what level you're at. It's just that your level of manager and level of leadership may change a bit. At the top, yes, you're doing a lot more planning. You know, you're certainly, but at the bottom level, you know, you're doing a lot more on leading in terms of execution. But if you lead, you know, when I told you about Simon Sinek, if you lead with the why, you know, why you're doing this, that's a big factor. People will follow you. Like only 91% of employees in North America can connect what they're doing at their job with connecting with the strategy. So as a manager, you've got a role there to keep on reinforcing the strategy and telling them why they have an impact on the organization and how they can impact the organization better. So that's really key. Here's another one too, is that if there's you know, above average development opportunities, all right, you'll get more commitment, right? So you need to take a look, you know, so all this behavioral management principles all come into play in terms of, you know, that famous radio station I talk about, WIIFM. What's in it for me? What's in it for that employee? So it's not just the job, it's the career path, it's the, you know, it's the challenge, it's the you know, the personal achievement and mastery that they could achieve in that job, and that'll keep a lot of them in that position. So that's key. So again, you can see a lot of gold keys around here about behavioral view of management. So the process, you know, you're energizing, you're directing, you're sustaining towards attaining a goal. You know, and it's all about changing behaviors, right? All these management principles are all about changing behaviors to get alignment, which gives you power to be able to achieve, you know, the goals and the outcomes of those goals and manifest them. And there's three elements. Well, there's the energy, it's the measure of intensity or drive. There's the direction. You know, you have to show them, here's the big prize, this is where we're going. You know, here's where you need to focus and channel your efforts. And then the persistence. You know, sustained effort to achieve a goal and satisfy a need, you know, being, you know, being absolutely persistent and locked into where you're going. So that's, you know, that's all towards being, you know, in terms of sustainability. So that's where that is. And just to understand, you know, how our theories are breaking down, we have content theories. You know, this is more of the nuts and bolts of getting things done in the organization. And then, I'm sorry, content theories, this is the behavioral side of the organization. And then process theories were the nuts and bolts. So you can see that, you know, Taylor's motivation theory, you know, Taylor was, you know, into scientific management and everything else, and goal setting theory. So understand the distinctions, and maybe it'll give you a little more insights as to, you know, what theories apply to what I'm doing and where. Okay, and this isn't an exclusive, no, totally inclusive list. It's some of the key ones, but I'm sure there's others that we've covered that are inside of this. Just wanted to focus here because we're into behavioral. Mary Parker Follett had a big contribution to engaging employees and coined this term win-win. You can see that it's highlighted here. So look into what's this win-win about. Well, this win-win is about it's about we have organizational goals and WIIFM. What's in it for you? What's in it for me is the mantra, and so that everybody wins, right? So that's key. And I kind of mentioned that again, but here here's some of our key considerations: force, coercion, domination, control. Motivating with fear. That doesn't work it. But power with shared power, respect, collaboration leads to collective action. All right, that's where you're doing it. And just they don't talk about a shared vision for nothing. Every employee should see themselves in the vision of the organization. They should see that they have a part in that. And when they see that they have a part in that, they're bought in, they're motivated, they're engaged. they see what's in it for them, and they understand the inspiration about getting, collectively doing something. All right. Okay, Donna Roy, the motivation of self-actualization and how workers experience time. And this kind of gives you a clue here, is that, we talked about the evolution of management principles. Well, don't think that, the later ones learn from the earlier ones. And that's the whole idea that we're trying to, promote with you, is that you're going to be out there with artificial intelligence having to come up with newer management principles and learn from what everybody has done. So if you take a look at Donald Roy, you can see that Donald Roy really knew about Maslow, right? He used Maslow's theory to develop motivation and self-actualization. I mean, that's the top level, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So that's key. You might want to know a little bit about banana time as well. It's sometimes you don't have everything in the workplace to in some cases some jobs are boring. So what you do is you have some off activities to keep people engaged and keep the camaraderie going, and to keep the what's the word, working together thing, going on quite well, right? So that's why you need some time to be able to, an informal interaction to be able to add to the job satisfaction. All right. Okay. So there's Roy's banana time. You can see that it's highlighted. Want you to kind of know what this is all about. Each time in the morning when a banana would be stolen from a worker's lunchbox. I mean, whatever works. I don't know if this would work in modern times, but that's what they did back then, and it worked. So it made work more tolerable. And what you're doing is you're creating fellowship, right? And if you create fellowship, then you create this camaraderie. Then you create what they call esprit de corps, esprit de, spirit of the body, coming together. So that's a great way of doing that. And you can find ways of doing that, and I did. I mean, I would take my teams for planning sessions, and during those planning sessions, we would have some activity times where maybe we would go bowling or things like that, and that really helped in bringing people together on other different levels and understanding each other and working better together. Okay, David McClellan, regardless of gender, culture, age, people are motivated by 3 factors. So let's think about that. So there's the need for achievement, the need for power, and the need for affiliation. And you can see that there's a lot of headlining here or highlighting. So this is important, that I want you to understand what these are in terms of, achievement has a strong need to set and accomplish challenging goals. Affiliation wants to belong to a group. Power wants to control, influence on others, and likes to win arguments. Well, I can tell you about myself. It's the need for achievement and need for affiliation that drove, most of my. That's how I got motivated. Power, I thought it was okay, but it wasn't one of the key things I was looking for. So, if you understand those needs, you go back to what's in it for me. You'll understand the characters, and that's why it's good to. When I was at TELUS, we had the resources, right? And we had a Myers-Briggs specialist in the HR group. And I would do a Myers-Briggs survey profile, or have them done for each individual. And when we first got together at a group, we talk about, what our predominances were and how we did things. And it really went a long way into understanding, what does my project manager need versus, my sales manager, and then I could switch my approach, to keep all of them as fulfilled as they possibly could be. Okay, and then Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs is famous. I mean, there's many organizations that subscribe to that theory. All workers don't have the same motivation, and you can see that, and one level supports the other. Just like my layer cake theory I gave you of planning. you know, if you're insecure, there's no way that you can be fulfilled around friendship and intimacy if you're insecure. So first of all, your survival needs have to be met, and then your safety needs, so that you're secure, and then you can do friendship and intimacy. And then when you do that, Stephen Covey says, that to be interdependent, you need to be independent. It means you need some certain strength and a sense about yourself before you can work with other people. And as you go up this, this hierarchy, one level is the foundation for the next level, until you get to the Gandhi level here at self-actualization, and you try to be the best at what you can be, and you do things for the greater good of society, right? So that's what it's all about. It's not just a personal motivation of self-interest. Okay, Victor Vroom, very important in this thing, and you're going to see a lot about expectancy theory, and individuals tend to act in a certain way based on the expectations that the action will be followed by a given outcome, right? So if you set their expectations, they will be motivated for it. And you can see his model here that's coming up. Okay, where are we going here? Okay, oops. Okay, so you can see here that if you want individual effort, well, you connect that, to a performance linkage. You say, yeah, we want you to perform a certain way, and then that person will actually perform that piece and will be driven, by the reward that they're doing, in terms of organizational rewards, and then you can translate that into individual goals. So for improving expectancy, you make sure employees have the necessary skills for the task. You provide training. You assign reasonable tasks and goals, right? So that's shaping the path. If you go back to the switch analogy, I talk about the Heath brothers. You shape the path for your employees. You put in the areas that will allow them to be successful, right? And then, you increase the individual's belief that the performance will lead to reward. So observe and recognize performance. And there's ways of recognizing performance. If you're just general about recognizing performance, it won't mean very much. But if you're specific into the specific attributes that they have, or the specific things that they did that met to that result, and you praise them in those with those aspects in front of people, it's an amazing difference in terms of them feeling motivated and feeling validated by what you've said about them. That's just as good a reward as a financial reward, and you indicate to employees how precious good performance led to greater rewards. Right, that's key. And then improving valence. What that means is improving the frequency. That's the valence. Okay. Make sure that reward is meaningful to the individual. Ask employees, what rewards they value. Give them rewards, and you do this on a regular basis. It's just not, a one-time thing. But the whole thing is that you make it meaningful each time. So it's not just, oh, well, yeah, they're giving us rewards today and we didn't do anything, right? So you want to improve that piece of it. McGregor, he was big on an individual view on the human behavior and how they leave, and so he came up with this theory X and theory Y, and this in some cases is still used today. We're more along the theory Y, and then that's where the worker enjoys the work. Those are, and when you want to talk about expectations, if you expect someone to behave a certain way, you're going to send the signals where they're going to pick up on that, and they will behave that way. So, and if you see that workers enjoy work, they seek out responsibility, exercise self-direction, well, then, you're going to find ways to accommodate that. But if you have the idea that the worker dislikes the work or wants to avoid responsibility, well, then you're going to be a heck of a lot more directive, right? In terms of how you're going to specify that. You're going to have tight control. You're going to be an authoritarian, and it produces a limited, depressed culture. no one will do anything unless they think that it's going to be acceptable by the boss. Whereas in a theory Y, they're allowed to make errors and learn from their mistakes and be very creative and have the license to do that and not fear that they'll be punished if some side thing goes wrong. It's all in, where are we going and what was the intentions and how do we make, how do we create the great solutions? Okay, and then Frederick Winslow Taylor, more of an engineer here, focusing on the scientific approach, and this was, how do we make this better, cheaper, faster, and that, and there's, that's still in play. And if you take a look at, where AI is going, it'll be even more enforced by AI because, the machine could be watching the employee. And where is that going to take us? So you got to be aware of, where that's going to go in the next generation of workers. He had the scientific view of management and through that. And here's, mainly I think this is the driven nature of forces. So I think it's mainly Noria, but here's what motivates people. One, the drive to acquire. You notice this is all highlighted, right? The drive to acquire, take control and retain objects and experiences. The drive to bond, social bond. So this is achievement, right? This is, being liked. I like to be liked. You drive to bond. You drive to learn, driven by the curiosity to understand, and to drive to defend, protect ourselves. So if you understand those, you'll in people and where they're at, in their hierarchy of needs on Maslow's level, you can tailor your approach to them, understand, what's driving them at the time, and those change, right? It's just what's predominant, in their view at this point in time. I think I'll talk a little bit about that later on, so that, you meet them at where they are and find a way that, how to motivate them, through social norms and past experience and what their personal values are to get them to have the right behavior to achieve that goal, and so there's environmental factors that you need to consider, and that's, Hertzberg talks about, hygiene factors or whatever, and then there's the personal factors where that's really going to drive their motivation. So here's a little more detail about drive to acquire. Are rewards tied to performance in your organization? Is your pay competitive? Drive to bond. Does your firm's culture encourage sharing of best practices? Do you have an open environment? Drive to learn. Does your work interest you? Is it challenging? Is it inspiring? Drive to defend. Is your firm's performance management system open and transparent and fair? Do people think that they're going to get punished? If they do something wrong based on their performance results, well, that's going to manage poor performance or less performance because they're afraid to make a mistake. Okay. So Hertzberg, here's where I mentioned hygiene factors. So the factors that motivate workers are different from the factors that demotivate people. So here's his piece, and here's what you have to learn. I'm not sure if all of you understand what table stakes are in gambling. Table stakes is you need to have a certain amount of money to get into the game. All right. Well, that's what hygiene factors are. You need to have a certain level of satisfaction, to keep employees there. And if that level of satisfaction lowers, they leave, right? So it might be just working conditions. If working conditions are threatening, well, that's a showstopper. They will leave, right? But if you want to motivate them to do greater work, well, then that's where you get into this green place in terms of motivators, so that you'll give them recognition. Maybe you'll give them more responsibility. Maybe just doing the work itself, sometimes is a reward because it's their passion, or you give them growth opportunities, or, like where I was at TELUS, we all had a personal development plan, and we all had a suggested career path where our bosses would help us achieve our personal goals as well. All right. But one of the hygiene factors, it was a high stress environment. There was a lot of pressure on meeting your goals in terms of sales, and if you didn't, there was some penalties. So that the average length of time of a vice president in sales, I'd say was about 2 years, and then they leave. All right. So those are the things that you know you've got to understand about Hertzberg. You know, there's motivators and there's hygiene factors, and the motivators are the satisfiers. The hygiene factors are the dissatisfiers. And the bottom line here, you know, hygiene factors can cause people to leave, but they cannot make people motivated. It's these things that make people motivated, to understand that piece. Okay, what I'm going to do is, it's 2:55. Let's just take another 5-minute break, and then I'll come back and I'll finish this this particular presentation. Okay. Meanwhile, there's nothing on the chat board. And if you have any questions, you know, I'll try to address those questions when we get started, when I see you at 3 p.m. Okay. Okay, I'm back. And so we're into job design here. And you can see here that this might help you in participation activity 7B, right? So, the way tasks are combined to form complete jobs. So that this might help you developing that design description in terms of making sure there's enough skill variety. Look at, how, what are those tasks? Are they a complete whole of identifiable piecework kind of thing? Some people, if they can't see the overall result of what they're doing, it demotivates them. And so you want to weigh that into that kind of job description. If they're just going to be, person on the assembly line and all they're doing is adding 4 bolts on an automobile, and you may want to, if you do have to have that job description, you're going to have to find a special person who's interested in just doing 4 bolts, forever for 8 hours a day. So those are the kind of things that you need to look at in building. And how much autonomy, does that have? How much feedback, to give that person clear information about the effectiveness of the performance of what they're doing. So this is key things, and again, they tie into the satisfiers, the motivators of what motivates someone to do that job. Okay, so this slide here is really, you can see that there's a lot of highlighting going on. Recruitment and retention is a key strategy in today's world. And why is that, just think when, a valuable person leaves the organization, one, they have all this knowledge in their head, right? That you as a business owner or business manager impacted because, you spent money on skills development and all those things. And then that leaves. The second thing is that relationships are broken apart. And so that, the person coming back, the person coming into that job may not be that same person, and that may have an impact on the dynamics of the relationships throughout, that department that person's working on, depending on the job. What I'm getting at is that it costs 6 times an annual salary to recruit someone in terms of cost, and then the person is leaving, leaves with corporate memory, leaves with skills that are required that is missing now. So that's why recruitment and retention are just as important. You get them there and to find the right person in the right job with the right skills and the right mindset and the right adjustments needed to fit into the culture, and then how do you keep them there? And that's where overall investment of everything adds to the overall capability of the organization. All right, and what's key is that HR management at one time, basically they looked after benefits and they hired and they fired, and that was about it. In today's world, it's a strategic part. And, even in my own experience, I was a VP in a division, and we had an HR representative there that acted like a senior manager and was in on the strategy of the organization, over the next 5 and 10 years, and was in on the main business issues so that they would understand what are the actual needs for that organization on all facets of human resources. So they became a very strong component. And because of that, our division attracted other people from the organization because it created such a great culture. The HR partner that we had was so effective that it had a great impact on everything. It was a great place to work. We had a lot of fun. We had good work. We got good rewards. It worked really well, right? So you can see that there's different things that come into play, in terms of what goes on, and how well you orient, the training and development involved, the total rewards, health and safety, all these things are all part of recruitment and retention. The management function concerned with getting training, motivating, and keeping competent employees. And so that there's various different ways of recognizing and rewarding people. One aspect is open book management. And what that is that, they see the results of what's going on. There's a book, and I don't know if I can't remember if I put it on there. Yeah, Jack Stack and Jim Canfield, there was an organization that was, International Harvester was going to crater. It was, and what they did, the employees took over, and right down to the cleaning people, they were all trained in the financial aspects of the organization and understood what they were doing, how it would impact their profits, because they were all owners. It was an employee ownership piece, and it was all open book management, and it got to be sort of a best in practice example of how companies could be run. And and it gets back to, again, these people understanding the financials gets back to the original things I was telling you about. You really have to know the business to be able to make it work better. Okay, and so that understand that. Other things are employee recognition programs, personal attention from management. It doesn't always have to be a raise or whatever. I know that in the teams that I run, sometimes just buying t-shirts with our group name on it and went a long way in making people feel acknowledged and things. Paying for performance, yeah, when you get a bonus or whatever, that really does that. Gamification, using a little bit of collaboration and competition to get the people going, offer prizes. A lot of professional development and training opportunities, permanent contracts. So a lot of people now are contractors, and they're they're company to company, contract to contract. So if there's some security there, that's a good recognition reward. And then work-life balance, flexible work schedule. So when I work with the on the boards of credit unions, one particular credit union, their stay rate of their clerks, at the front counter was like about 3 months. They come in and they'd leave and couldn't figure out, what was going on. So we had a consultant come in and really focused on work-life balance. A lot of these people were single parents. A lot of them, had maybe second jobs, and so that we accommodated that, and also we brought in a program where credit unions are big into being a community member, and so we allowed them in certain programs to design their own community helping program, to get them involved that way. So this work-life balance is really important. Okay, open book, talked about that. Okay, so recruitment, there's you write the job description, and what you do is, you have minimum qualifications that a person must possess to perform that job successfully. But in that selection process, there has to be a lot of reliability, in terms of how do you do that, so that you may have hiring, like, so for TELUS, it was across the country. So the different people were in different geographical areas, but they had a system of that selection device. They were measuring the same things. It was very consistent, and it also, what you do, if you set up this criteria in your job description, and then down the road, you start measuring things in their performance that ties back to that criteria, in later job performance, then that the criteria that you're using to select is working, and then you will get the right people, and because of the big costs of not retaining an employee and having to go through this all over again, that goes away somewhat, and you have a better rounded organization, and the more good people that you have in the organization, the better it gets. It's that simple, right? So reliability and validity are really key. Use those criteria on a standardized basis, to bring them in, and then test that criteria with past performance to make sure that, yeah, we did hire on the right criteria because we're getting the results in those jobs. Okay, so again, you take a look at, what kind of rewards. Well, there's a whole pile of rewards. There's, strategic compensation, so skill-based rewards. So here, your years of experience and credentials, and then here's a good way of looking at your resume to see, what you bring to the table, and then variable pay, so that there's a bonus involved. Good benefits, work-life balance, career development. So those are all the key things, that will not only attract the right people, but will retain them. Okay, and then there's direct compensation and indirect. So, you can break that down in terms of, well, salary and retirement pay and bonuses. I mean, that's all direct. Indirect, work-life balance, recognition, professional development, and mentoring is a big thing. To set up a mentoring process right in your own organization rather than leaving it to individuals to find mentors will have a lasting effect of reinforcing your culture and aligning behaviors. It'll have an amazing result. Okay, so in terms of recruitment, again, these slides are right out of your slide deck. They're important. So review the job description and specifications, prepare a structured set of situational and behavioral questions. And again, sometimes people are a little bit, I don't know what the word is. There's these standard questions. You can go on the internet and they're asked the same way for the same reason. And do they have a bearing? It gets back to, these two things. Is that, are these questions reliable in asking them? Do they have some validity? Can you map them to past performance? So that's really important. Reviewing the application's resume. I know that when I got hired on at Ontario Hydronuclear, I was ecstatic, right? Got hired on as a process engineer, and I met the person who interviewed me a few times and got to know that person. And I asked, I said, James, why did you hire me? And he said, we always look for a track record. So we saw that you were consistently improving your capabilities. And you were, there was no absence of work in between, and that track record led me to believe that, hey, yeah, you're the right person for the job. So it's interesting, on what your resume could tell, and know that. And then the interview, put the applicant at ease. A lot of groups, especially like WestJet. I don't know what they do now, but they used to interview by committee. So they'd have somebody, like a airline pilot and an administration person and a service agent, and the group would interview you to see if you had all the pieces that you could get along with all parts of the organization, and that went a long way to bringing in really good people. Give the candidate a chance to ask questions. End the interview, tell the applicant what's going to happen, and then you do the evaluation, and you do it quick, right? So in recruitment and job analysis, define those tasks that make up the job and behaviors necessary to do them, and then identify those gaps in human resources inventory. When I was on, a lot of the board work, we would have a profile of all the board members on terms of what were their skills and experience and capabilities and history. And then we would look at our strategic plan and say, okay, what are some of the key attributes of board members that we're going to need to drive future direction? And then we'd recruit board member applicants based on where we were missing in certain areas of competencies or capabilities or experience in order to complete our strategic plan. So those are the kind of things that you need keep in mind. And then training and development, it goes a long way. And I'll say that Canadian corporations are a bit lax when it comes to training and development compared to their counterparts, in Europe and the U.S. So that there's different ways in today's world in terms of on-the-job training, and there's job rotation that you can do to especially if you're grooming somebody to become a leader in the organization. Move them around the company to get a good taste of how things get done and how the work is processed. Mentoring and coaching. There's exercises that you could do. I know that I've been sent on these different training exercises where it was a simulation, and we had to sell something to a major customer, and it's under pressure, and you learn a whole pile of stuff about yourself that you never would have thought of, just trying to pull it out of a book. So there's different modalities or venues to be able to train. Okay, and then here's the environmental factors impacting that, the economic conditions, the labor market issues, organizational culture. We want to get the right people in that have the mindset to be able to adjust to your culture, government legislation. So there's all kinds of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about workforce reduction, and that's when a position is eliminated with no intention of replacing it. And a lot of companies will do that. Instead of just outright downsizing, maybe they have certain ways of doing that, and we'll get to that. And it results in a permanent cut in headcount because they're trying to cut their costs down to maintain profitability and viability in keeping on. So an employer may decide to reduce its workforce by even just terminating employees or letting by means of attrition. So here's a few of those workforce reduction strategies. So natural attrition. So gradual voluntary reduction of staff, as they're leaving, maybe they're retiring or they want to go to another job. You don't replace that. In some cases, sometimes you do a hiring freeze. Canadian companies have been known to do that, especially as the economy starts slowing down. They will freeze hiring to make sure that they can still be profitable. Reskilling. And what you do then is that you may want to get them to leave a particular area and not replace them, but skill them up to put them in another area where they can contribute. Limiting overtime, that's key, because normally in North America, overtime is probably at least 1.5 times an hour rate when you're using overtime, so costs go up in production. Furloughs, temporary leave of absence, to allow that, or reduced work weeks. So instead of laying off, a few people in the organization, you go down to a 4-week work week, and then that way, you still get most of the work done, but there's one day less that you have to pay everybody. Okay, so in human resource management, you have recruitment, you have training and development, benefits and compensation, employee relations, and performance management. And that's a longer list than what it was when I first started working. And then I just wanted to talk to you about Hawthorne effect. And now we're flipping back again, and we're talking about, behavioral management principles. And what you want to key in on is Elton Mayo. And you see that I highlighted. So you should know a lot about Elton Mayo. And Elton Mayo was one of the people working on the Hawthorne project. Lloyd Warner actually coined the term, the Hawthorne effect, right? They both worked on that. But what they were doing is they were trying to find ways to improve productivity and anything. They tried to improve the lighting. They tried, they saw that employees' productivity increased, less lighting or no change or more lighting, right? So what did it come down to? Is that they were paying attention to people, right? And that's a key thing. So that was a behavioral thing that they learned, is that you have to look at validating workers to be able to motivate them and inspire them. Okay, so the hawthorn effect, when people change or improve their behavior because they know they're being watched. All right, so it's named after that factory. So they learned a lot about that. So again, you could see this golden key about Mayo, but he came up about workplace rules and procedures that influence worker attitudes and worker attitudes that create informal rules. And you'll learn in as you go along is that there's a lot of people in organizations that they're not managers but they're thought leaders. They're looked upon by the other workers and followed. And you need to understand, you really need to engage and inspire those thought leaders to support the goals of the organization. And that goes a long way. And the lack of attention to workers results in underproduction. So you've got to find ways of engaging these people and going through. And I'll tell you my own experience, right? When I was a process engineer, I spent a lot of time, management by walking around. I would go and spec all my jobs inside of the production areas, and I made a point to talk to the people working on those systems and equipment. And the fact that I talked to them, I wasn't a management threat. And what it was is I built this level of trust where they would tell me things that they would normally not tell management. And then I would accommodate improving those wherever I could. And that went such a way. And it was it was the relationship, that built that trust. And lo and behold, my systems ran a lot better. And I would get calls when even there was an impending thing that they thought might go wrong, they'd inform me. And they were looking out for me. So that went a long way. Matter of fact, as a technical person, when I left and we had a celebration, I was told that it had the most operational people that came to that reception than any other technical person since that organization started in that area. I was so proud of that. So those are the kind of things that Mayo is bringing into play. You pay attention to workers. You create you create the conditions where you can influence the worker attitudes. And what happens then? The culture takes over. That's what informal rules are all about. They're steeped in the culture of the organization. And what does that do? It drives behavior, and it aligns and drives behavior to get to greater outcomes for the organization. Produces job satisfaction, improves group dynamics, all those things. So that's what to take a look at. So go through these the Mayo pieces, and here's where you increase job satisfaction, opportunities to discuss problems, opportunities to discuss opinions, freedom to determine working conditions, ability to set their own standards of output, and I would always go into the areas and say, what do you guys need? What's working? What's not working? How can I do that? I wasn't just interested in, okay, here's my job, here's the spec, carry it out. And that goes a long way in motivating people. Okay, but you need more than just to motivate people, okay? You need to understand, the employee manager relationship, so you need to direct them. They need to know where they're going. You need to give them the reasons why they're doing that. And then you find other ways of inspiring them and motivating them, and people matter. Okay, so this is why I'm on this value-based thing, and I've always been that way. Value-based hiring is critical to success, and what you do is you try to hire the people who want something more than just a paycheck every month. They want candidates who believe in their purpose and have similar overlap values, so that you have that approach, this VBR, this values-based recruitment. It's an approach that attracts talent on the basis that their individual values and behaviors align with the values of the company and the organization. That's where, alignment is key. That's where the power is. Okay, so just want to kind of show you, just give you a little bit of information about myself, in terms of, I was on a values project for TELUS for, a year and a half, and it wasn't all that I did at the time, but it was one of the projects that I worked on. And I worked with a company called Values Technology. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to me, they really had Maslow's hierarchy of need built into their system, and I didn't know it. So if you take a look at this, physiological safety, love, and whatever, up to self-actualization, what they did was they created a values continuum along that, so you can see that this is survival, and at this end here is self-actualization. And what we did was we interviewed and surveyed 1,200 people in the organization, and we wanted to get a sense of where the value clusters were in the organization, and that was to highlight to the management how their style should accommodate the biggest preponderances of clustered values to be able to align the people, right? And so what we did was we had them go along, and we wanted to find out, we had different questions about their values of where they sat. All right, so if you look at me, when I think I was about I was about here 15 on my responses. So I was kind of happy with that. I wasn't Gandhi, but I was getting there. Okay, so what we did was out of those 1,200 people, this is what the culmination of those value surveys look like. So we had a lot of people in the self-initiating post-conventional thing where we were talking about a little bit of self-actualization, and equality and adaptability and flexibility and honesty, and we can see where that kind of fit along in here, and that just changed the approach of what we've done, and that's why I learned so much in this project. All my consulting is based on value-based organizations and value-based management. There's a lot of truth to that, and that's how that works. So what you need to understand, though, is that this isn't set in stone. Is that you have a set of values that you're living, but you have what they call latent values. And what latent values are, they're in your subconscious, but the conditions aren't bringing them out. All right. So let's just say what would happen. So I'm sure. All right. I'm sure that if this was the values, say, of a company, pre-pandemic, this hump would probably be more along here during pandemic, because everybody was, because of the conditions changing, they're more, worried about, am I going to survive? Am I going to still have a job? Am I going to, so there's this guy by the name of Dr. Massey, and his mantra was, you are what you are because of what you were when. And what he talks about are very significant emotional events that will change you, and you will adopt a different value set. So if you lose a partner, or you go through a serious job firing, or you go to prison, that changes where you are and brings in different values. And so that you need to understand that if your organization goes through a stressful period, that your management style should change a bit, because that people are going more towards the survival side of Maslow's hierarchy than the self-actualization. Okay, so those are some of the things to keep in mind. And again, if you take a look at this mental model that I created, it all starts in your beliefs, and your beliefs really are the ground to create your core values, your behavior, and I call them ingrained core values. So that means that you're really sunk into them, and it's your beliefs that drives that, and your core values then sets up your behaviors. You behave based on your core values. So that's your attitudes. That's where you start manifesting the culture, and then when you get into into the planning piece about it, you start why am I doing this? Purpose is another foundation, and I call this my layer cake, right, of planning foundations. So if we have the wrong purpose, this layer will crumble and everything above it will crumble, right? And so that if we have ingrained core values, but we're forced to behave differently, all right, so that means this layer will crumble, so everything kind of sets itself up. And you can see that, on this end here, these are like governance aspects of planning. Right here, this is a strategic intent, and then this is cultural, this is identity. And understanding how this all comes together is key. Okay, not going to talk about that. Here we've got some tips for motivating employees. Understand a little bit about union and labor relations. Collective bargaining process. You have to respect that. You have to, as a manager, and if you have a collective bargaining contract in your organization, as a manager, you better understand it and know what the limits are, because people have security around that, and that could really kind of affect how they look at you. They may not even trust you if you're not honoring that agreement. So that's key. And then here's 5P models. This is just for your benefit. What is it? It's purpose, principles, processes, people, and performance. It's all about alignment. It's all about creating behavior to trigger that performance, to go from there. So I have a little bit more about this piece, and I just wanted to talk to you about, again, I'm trying to preach to you a little bit, but I think if you understand the power alignment, it's the secret sauce. All right. And it's not just one thing. You might go to Dr. Google and say, well, what's the key thing? How can you have clarity? And it'll say, well, you really need to have purpose. You need to have a lot of things, So if you can line up beliefs, your core values, your purpose, your principles, your authentic desires, your intentions, the vision, your direction, that all gives clarity to what you're going. And then focus. And then we talked about how mindset will bring about focus, so your mindset, the mission of your organization, what's critical for success in your organization? What are your goals? That's the focus, using some system thinking. And then how do you impact? Well, old-fashioned discipline and commitment, objectives, initiatives. And then how do you get those results through all these tools? And that's where, especially in your day and age, you're really going to understand, you need to understand change management. You really need to respect time management, because everything is faster, better, right? And, the cycles of production are low, quicker and quicker and quicker. You got to understand people management. You got to understand process management, and you got to understand performance management. And these are going to give you all the attributes that you need to be able to do critical thinking to work with AI. Okay. So I think that's what it is, and that's all I'm going to cover. Okay. Just on this last piece here, you'll see that there's some outdated announcements, because this was from another term, but it'll give you an idea of what's going on. That, like, the team thing hasn't changed too much, but here's some information about Amazon. And what I recommend is that have a look at these, because you'll get the sense of what issues that Amazon is facing, and then that way you'll be able to answer those questions on the Amazon project much better, right? Through what they're doing, with their people and whatever. So have a look at this piece, and one thing I think, I don't know if I have it, if I've given you the link, but Amazon's leadership principles. I mean, they've started their own management principles on what they want to do. I would cover these, before you do the Amazon project assignment. Okay, and here's some key things about some of the reviews about Amazon. 3.7 out of 4. How they approve of the CEO, would they recommend it to a friend. So it gives you an idea of where the labor force is, in terms of how they see the pay, how they see work-life balance. So that'll give you some good information. about about Amazon itself. So that's all I'm going to share with you. The test opens at 4 o'clock. You can start right there. Again, I'll just remind you, make sure that your lockdown browser works. Make sure that your webcam works. It'll ask you probably to do a security with your ID. You can just hit what's the word? Just continue, and you can bypass that piece. But if something does go wrong, what the options are is that you email me, especially if you've got knocked out of the internet. But you take a look at clearing your cache, rebooting, and then get back in, and then if you have any concerns or whatever, email me on my RDP email, gary.sarantola@rdpolytech.ca, and I'll be responsive to that. Okay? Any questions at all? Okay, go ahead, Becky.
We have tomorrow at 3 o'clock to start that, or is it closed tomorrow?
It closes at 3 o'clock. That's
Okay,
when that's when you can't get into it. Okay, but if you started at 2:59, I think you can do the 80 minutes. I think that's how that works. I wouldn't leave it till that late, so go ahead and get started earlier. Okay. Yes, it's open until 3 p.m. 3 p.m. tomorrow. Yes. And I sent you that announcement. I emailed it to you, so you can go back to Blackboard announcements and learn all about that test and all the particulars. Okay, and Armelia is typing something, so let's just see what the question is. That's a long question. Still typing. Okay, that's it. All right. So, like I said, I'm accessible by email. Please don't email me through Blackboard. When it comes to anything about the test, because I won't be on Blackboard on a regular basis. I answer it when I do, and I'll serve you much better if you use my RDP email at any time. Okay. And we'll go from there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question on the grades. I've seen something there that's web exam practice. Do we have to do anything on that? Do we submit something?
Oh no, don't worry about the practice things. There won't be any grades associated with that.
Okay.
Okay, but there are, I think there's still a test on there where you can actually test your lockdown browser. I don't know if that, but there's no marks associated with that. And going forward, really have a look at these practice tests. They'll give you some insights. They're not, they're going to be very similar to the type of questions asked, but if you just studied the practice tests, you would not get very well, you would not have that much success. But if you take the insights from the practice tests and the commentary presentations, you should do really well. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay. So just do your routines. Stay get a lot of sleep in this last few weeks. It's a very shrunk timeline. There's lots to do, so try to put it into a routine where you can do a little bit every day, and I think that's going to help you. And with that, I'll say okay, adieu. We'll talk to you later, and I'll stop the recording.